Hi, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Smiles. Today I'm speaking with Andre Shirdan. Andre is an inspirational speaker, executive coach, certified trainer, and the founder of the Crew Process and the Eagle Sought Field Guide. In the past 30 years, Andre has worked with thousands of practices, helping create systems for treatment planning, team training, and marketing. He's also helped thousands of practices integrate software and technology into their practices. In this episode, Andre explains the crew process and why he hates the word team. And while we talk about everything from car racing to cassette tapes, there are some absolute practice management gems you don't want to miss. Take a listen. Well, hi. It is my pleasure to welcome Andre Shirdan to our Behind the Smiles show. Hi, Andre.
How are you? Good to finally catch up.
I know. Well,
long time coming.
I know. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on the show. I know you're very busy, and I'd like to start by asking you a few questions.
Sure. Love to.
First of all, I know a little bit of your story.
Okay.
I know that you started originally in high-end retail, selling expensive gowns, and then eventually you ended up helping your brother-in-law, who was a dentist, run his practice. Tell me what happened afterwards. How did you end up to be a speaker, an executive coach, a certified trainer? Tell me about your journey.
Well, it was actually a really crazy story because about a week and a half after working with my brother-in-law, his buddy started calling and saying, "Hey, can you help me?" And I was a big fan of Tony Robbins at the time. I had all the cassette tapes and everything else. So I actually booked a hotel room in Boston, and I knew I wasn't going to get much traction in my area, in the Philadelphia area. Philadelphia is a really small, big town. Everybody knows each other. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go someplace where I don't know a lot of people, but I know the area pretty well. So I booked a hotel room just north of Boston and sent out faxes to all the dentists in the area and said, I'm having this big event about practice management. And that was the first day. I had 300 doctors there, and it became a big event. And I just started doing that all over the country. And so 6 months after starting with my brother-in-law, I was traveling the country, teaching other dentists how to run their practices. And it's 30 years later now. It's just been a whirlwind. It's just been crazy.
Wow. It is a crazy story. I mean, 2.5 weeks or a week and a half after starting to help your brother. But I suppose dentistry we'd like to think that dentistry is completely different type of business, but business is business, isn't it?
Business is business. And that's the bottom line. And typically the things that I would hear from everybody on the speaking circuit was dentistry's different. Dentistry's different. And what happens, and I have clients in Manhattan, Kansas, and Manhattan, New York. And dentistry is the same. The people react to things differently. It's so funny. I always use those as an example because in Manhattan, Kansas, if it rains, the patients want to come in because nobody wants to farm at the time. But in Manhattan, New York, if it rains, nobody wants to come out of their buildings. So there is a difference and there is a nuance that happens. But once you know the market, patients are patients. Once you get them in the chair, of course, they never bring their checkbooks. It's all the same when it comes down to the interaction. But when it comes to patients as customers, it is the same. It really is the same. Yeah.
Absolutely. You've mentioned that you've been in dentistry for almost 30 years now. You mentioned cassette tapes. You kind of dated yourself there. Has dentistry changed over the years? And if so, in which way? Because again, business is business, right?
Yeah, a lot of it has changed because, actually, I think the biggest thing that's changed for us is the fact that the profit margins have changed. I think that is one of the things that I've really noticed, especially for my clients who've been in business that for that period of time. It used to be that, you didn't miss dollars. They would fall on the floor. You wouldn't even pick them up. Now, if a nickel falls, you're reaching for the nickel. It is that tight. And I think that's what's changed. A lot of people didn't pay attention to the fact that they were in PPO plans before. It was just, money coming in. Now things are so tight that they have to watch out for it. And they're becoming resentful for those dollars being cut. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen. It's just the market's tightened up. I think that's where it is.
Why do you think is that? Too many dentists, insurances, devalue dentistry. Why is that so?
I think okay, I'm not going to be popular for saying this, but I think we've caused a lot of the problems. I think, the language we've used in dentistry for 30 years has not changed much. The perfect example I use is, a periodontal probe. If we, think about a periodontal probe and you tell a patient the next time you come in, we're going to be doing x-rays and probing. How many patients really want to come in to be x-rayed and probed? And I can do this in a room full of 5 people or 5,000 people in an audience. And I can ask the audience, we're all professionals, we're all in the dental business. How many people want to take an x-ray? And no hands would go up. And I say, why do you think your customers would want to have an x-ray taken? And we haven't shifted where there is a mammography center in the world called the Chest X-ray Center. But at the same time, we call it x-rays. But if we have a 5-year-old in the chair, we call it a picture. Right. We haven't changed, and we haven't met where our customers, I think that is the biggest issue. And the gap between us not changing and the customer looking at more, from a financial side of things, we haven't figured out a way to make those two come together. And that's always been my quest is to try to do what I learned from retail, from customer service training, and put that into dentistry and make those two things match up. That's been my crutch that I've had to carry all these years.
You make an excellent point, and I've heard you speak about the patient experience before. In fact, I just wrote a blog article recently for my blog about elevating patient experience. Tell me your perspective. What have you taken from the retail industry and kind of brought into dentistry, and how do we create that patient experience?
Yeah. Well, when I started in retail, this was, late 70s, early 80s. Wow, boy, I'm getting old. Late 70s, early 80s. I sold $10 shoes. That was one of my first jobs. I sold ladies' shoes. They were $10. That was our unique selling proposition. And that experience was great. The customer found the shoes they wanted. They bought the shoes. They put them in a bag and they're gone. I went from that to selling, $10,000 ball gowns. And that experience was something where I wrapped it. It was in tissue paper, and had to be pink tissue paper, and it had to be, wrapped, and had to be you had to put a bow on it. And that wrapped package went into another big bag, and that big bag had a piece of tissue paper inside the bag. And then there was a business card that went on it, and it was a whole process that happened. Now, was there anything different? No. Was there a level of customer service that was different? Yes, but at the same time, I could have done the same things I was doing at the $10 shoe store, selling $600 shoes. That wasn't different. And I think we've taken some things in dentistry and we've tried to introduce some things like a warm cookie. Right. And I have offices that have warm cookies. Well, there's a miss that happens there when that warm cookie becomes an aroma that turns off patients. Some things we don't need the dental office. So some things work, some things don't. And you can't apply everything to dentistry.
Very true. So give me some examples of the things that, anyone who's listening to this today could take into their practice and implement and create that experience.
Well, one of the things and I tell every office this, especially in my seminars, can you please stop sending birthday cards? My feeling is that birthday cards from the dental practice. I lost my cat a few years ago, and the vet that I was going to still sends me a birthday card for the cat. Well, they put the cat down. The disconnect there is so obvious. Now, I still get birthday cards from dental offices because years ago, as I would train them, I put my real name and birthday and address into the system so they would have a contact place for me. But I still get this computer-generated birthday card from these practices 20 years later. And it's so plastic and it's so disconnected. So one of the things I started saying is, why don't we send anniversary cards to our patients? like I get one every year from American Express. You've been a customer for X number of years. Well, they send it to me because I spend $500 a year, to have the credit card. But at least I feel like I'm a member, and that's the term they use. I've been a member since X, and I don't mind that as much because I realize that's not something I get every year. I get every 5 years. Well, a 5-year anniversary, a 10-year anniversary, 15-year anniversary. That's something that makes me feel connected to that business. And it's not something that happens in dentistry because we disconnect from the customer, especially if it's not signed. Now, I do love some of the ways that we're doing it with technology and making it a video and something fun. But the generic printed, maybe even embossed card that, nobody even touched, it just went into an envelope and went out. Those things are so passé, we have to get past it. It's not building our practice. It's little things like that. And, one of my big pet peeves, I walk into a practice. Obviously, it's the first time walking into a practice because I tend to just go into practices. I have a weird hobby. I go into a practice and I'm not acknowledged, and nobody looks up. Nobody says, "Oh, you must be new. Are you Mr. Smith? I see Mr. Smith's coming in at 2:00." Well, even if I'm not Mr. Smith, at least I get this feeling like I'm being greeted coming into the office. And that's something that it pains me when I see it on a daily basis.
You make a great point. One of my biggest pet peeves in a doctor's office is a sign-in sheet. Mm-hmm. You walk in and you have to sign your name, what time you came in, what time your appointment is, which doctor you're seeing. And I'm always thinking, first of all, you're right there. If you don't know who I am, at least say hi. Lift your head up, greet me. But why do you need me to write the time of my appointment and which doctor I'm seeing? That information is in your practice management software. And we've got rid of the sign-in sheet a long time ago. And the coolest thing is that forced my front office to recognize patients. So now when they walk in, when a patient walks in, my team member at the front, that director of first impressions, as we call her, she lifts her head up and says, "Hi, Andre," because you know what? She either knows who the patient is. We have a picture in our practice management software, or if she doesn't know, she can guess. I mean, how many people randomly walk in into our dental offices, except maybe for you?
Crazy people like me. Well, I always use this example when I do seminars. I walked into a practice, and this was an office where I was hired to come in and do customer service training, and the rest of the office didn't know that I was hired. So I got there, and I walked to the front, and it was one of these older offices with the sort of slide window that opened, and the woman behind the desk said, "Name." And I said, "Andre Shirdan." And she said, and I could see her looking at her either sign-in sheet or something. And she said, "Dentist or hygienist?" And I said, "Dentist," because I was there to see the dentist. And this is the entire exchange. And then she said, "Have a seat." So I sat down. And that was the entirety of the conversation that we had with this person. No welcome, no thank you for coming, no, would you like a cup of coffee or anything? It was just literally, name, dentist or hygienist, sit down.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And you were probably thinking, oh boy, I have some work to do in this practice.
Actually, what I was thinking is this is going to be the easiest job I've ever had because I could just replace her with somebody else and my job is done.
And one of the things we were talking about retail earlier, one of the things in retail I notice is that, when they hand you the package, and it doesn't matter whether it's, the shoes or, a more expensive gown, they walk around the counter and they hand it to you. They don't just lift it and hand it over to you over the counter. And, in more high-end stores, they give you or they offer you a bottle of water. They want to make that experience pleasant for you. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I was writing in my article is that even though sometimes we can't avoid waiting, right? We need to minimize the time that our patients spend in the reception, but sometimes that time ends up being spent there anyway for one reason or another. Sometimes the appointment is kind of long, And whatever happens, we need to make that stay with us a pleasant one. Mm-hmm. From the first moment to the last. And I think that's where we often drop the ball. I wanted to ask you, you've mentioned before, I don't know where I heard this, but you've mentioned that your life is full of four-letter words. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, when I first started in dentistry, the first book that I read, and this was, I mean, honestly, when I started with my brother-in-law, I grabbed every single book off of his bookshelf and said, I'm going to read every one of them cover to cover, including the ADA code book. So my first book really was a book on periodontal coding and periodontal surgeries. And that was one of my passions. So I started with, okay, and everything in dentistry is a quad. So that's kind of how I started. And then I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about the acronyms that I use. So, I hate the word team. This is something that's another one of the banes of my existence. So when I came up with CREW as an acronym, that worked perfectly because another four-letter word. But I also, one of the other things was when I first started in dentistry, selling was such a bad word. Sell was such a bad word. And every time I would say, I'm from the sales industry and I've been trained, by the best in sales, Zig Ziglar to Brian Tracy to everybody else in sales, when I told people that, they said, oh, well, sell is a bad word in dentistry. So I said, okay, so that's one of the new four-letter words I'm going to have to learn. And I thought about it as an acronym, and I thought, okay, so what I do in my job is I work with customers to seek equal listening and language. So one of the big things I have to work on is that those four letters. How do I get people to do that? How do I seek equal listening and a language? And that brought me to all the other four-letter words that I work with. So sell, CREW, team, and almost everything has kind of worked out to be that way. And it's funny because as I do this, I find these, even like the scientific method is a four-part process. Everything tends to break down to four pieces. And, now I've got a PowerPoint that's just all these little things. It has worked out to be four pieces to almost everything that I've worked on. And it's also simplified things. Keep it simple, stupid. It's worked out to be in such a way that I can take almost every problem and figure out a process to fix it through 4 steps. And that makes it easier for everybody, but it also makes it so that we can measure outcomes easier. That's how that four-letter thing came out.
Well, that's great. I have to ask you, you said you hate the word team.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Okay. So years ago, and again, I've done pretty much every CE that there is. When I started hearing people talk about teamwork, what they were doing is to try to get everybody in harmony. Now, the problem with that is in the tests that I always use, and I've done this a lot of times to the detriment of the team. I'll ask the question, Friday, actually right now, this Friday, we're having a huge lottery drawing in most of the states. I mean, I've seen it's like $400 million. It's almost $1 billion if you're in lottery and Super Bowl. Now, if your team goes in together and buys lottery tickets, Friday they win, Monday they're at the state capitol picking up that big giant check. So did together everyone achieve more? No, because the doctor will be there Monday morning canceling patients because everybody else will be gone. So really, that is not a team focused on the outcome of the practice. That is a team that's focused on the individual outcomes, which is there's nothing wrong with. But to think that team building is the same as building the practice is different. The reason I believe in CREW over team, and I know we're just splitting hairs and talking acronyms, but I believe in the idea of CREW is we have an outcome. We're rowing a boat. We're all in it together. And if you don't feel well today, Gina, and I can appreciate if you don't feel well, give me a call, tell me you're not feeling well, and I will find somebody who can do your job, pull your oar. And that's not that we can still have a margarita after work and we can still be friends, but I have to understand that the outcome I'm looking for is to win the race. And that race is daily. And I look at it, I'm a big race car guy, so I'm always looking at crews. And it's funny that teams play games and crews have people's lives in their hands. So if you look at a flight crew or any of those kind of things, a little different. So I've just been fighting that word team because it always comes down to singing Kumbaya and not really saying, how do we win this race? The best, the most, recognized team in the whole world is, the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. And those three guys, Michael Jordan, Scott Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, said that they never had a relationship. They never spent a moment together. They never, ever talked to each other. But when they were on the court, they were phenomenal together. And that, to me, is more of a crew, because guess what? Doesn't matter when they're on the boat, they are rowing at the best that they can do, but they also are doing the jobs that they were supposed to do. So that's why I fight against the word team, just because of where I've seen practices go with the idea of teamwork.
Excellent point.
It's not the same thing.
Excellent point. I apologize. The internet is not very stable, so there's a little static there. You've mentioned racing, and it's incredible. I love watching the pit stop and how they work together in seconds, and every movement is synchronized. Everyone has their part. They know their part well, and they show up.
Exactly.
And you're right. In some sports teams, again, you mentioned Chicago Bulls, where I'm from, LA. I'm a huge Lakers fan, but on that team, when you had Shaq and Kobe, there was no teamwork there. And even though we've had some championships, unfortunately, that wasn't the kind of teamwork that you would hope to see on the team. So I get it. Great explanation. So how do you build a crew? What's the crew process?
Well, it's really about and this is what everybody who is into sports, I'm not into sports except for racing, this is what people always are fussing about when it comes to teamwork. The Yankees, you go out and you find the best of the best, and you pay for the best of the best to do the jobs that they're supposed to do. And when they're not doing the job, you find somebody else. If you're paying somebody a lot of money and they're not doing their job, let them go and get somebody else. And it doesn't sound like it sounds harsh, but it's the reality of it. Because again, race cars, if you're not confident that I've screwed the nuts on the wheel, the lugs on the wheel enough, you're not going to go at your full speed. If your assistant is not somebody who you're confident is going to bring all the equipment in, you're constantly thinking, I need to get up and go get what I need to do this procedure, because you don't have the confidence in that person. And I'd rather that you replace that person, or have three people who are who can compensate for each other, instead of having one person that is not going to give you the ball. I mean, that's I'm splitting metaphors here, but that's the way I think about crew. It is really about building the right group of people who are going to get you to the outcome. And that's what crew's all about. And I love the people I work with. It's so funny, Harriet, who has been my assistant for years, she has ultimate confidence in what I do. I have ultimate confidence in what she does. Sometimes I don't even think about it, because I know that she's got my back, and I know that she's the person. And again, it goes back to teamwork. If I fall back, I know she's there to catch me. But at the same time, I realize that if she's not feeling up to snuff, I better not fall back in her arms, because she might not be able to catch me. It might not be the day to do that. So she's okay with saying, hey, Andre, don't fall back into my arms today, because I'm not going to be the person for it. So, and that's the way we look at it on a daily basis. The people who I work with, it's always a referral to a hygienist who does work, because I'm fully confident that she's going to be able to do the job for me. So that's how crew works.
Simon Sinek says, and I know it's not your favorite word, but he says team is not a group of people who work together. Team is a group of people who trust each other, right? And that's what you're talking about. She needs to be able to trust you enough to know herself, to say, look, today is not my best day, and know that you're going to be okay with it. And you need to be able to trust her that she's at least going to be forthcoming with that information. For me, and I teach my kids and every single person on my team, this crew, the same thing. Whatever happens, no matter what, tell me about it. We'll talk about it. I don't want to find out, I don't want this to happen behind my back and then I find out accidentally, because then we're going to have an issue. But if you are forthcoming, we can talk about it. We can come to, the right solution together.
Yep.
how do interviewing people, hiring people, firing people, this is such a hot topic. This is what the three things that dentists talk about most of the time. And, EagleSoft Field Guide is such a breath of fresh air in that sense, because those topics don't often come up. They're not allowed there. But we talk about DSOs, HMOs and PPOs, right? The three-letter words. And we talk about people management. So many dentists are heard saying, business is hard. I don't like to manage people. I don't know how to motivate employees. What advice would you give those dentists on hiring, terminating, motivating, if that's even possible, and managing?
It's tough because, I don't know that there is an easy answer. I think this is a day-to-day thing. Dentistry, we're in such close confined spaces. We work with people that we spend more time with than our families for the most part. And it is just like working with a family. The dynamics that happen in the office are interpersonal and business at the same time. So it's tough. The biggest thing that for me is being honest. And I think that is one of those things where, do we share numbers with people? Do we share that we're having a bad day? One of the things, the huddle that we all talk about in the morning, why don't we in the morning go around the room and say on a scale from A to F, again, that's my grades instead of letters. Well, on a scale from A to F, how's your day going? And let's just go around the room. And if I say, hey, I'm an A, there's always that person. Or there's the person that says, I'm a D today, and I don't know that I'm going to have a good day. Then at least we know that person we can help, or we might be able to say, hey, look, can you just go into sterilization today and we can get somebody else to do your job chairside? So whatever the outcome, but being honest. And I think that's one of the things that we're not good with, is to be honest. And it's great. Again, Harriet she'll tell me in a minute, you're a big dummy for doing that, but I empower her to do that because sometimes she's right. Sometimes she is, well, most of the time she's right, but the times when she's not right, at least I can say, and I'll tell her, I was like, you were wrong about this. I got the plane ticket for a better fare. Whatever it is, but at least we can have that back and forth banter, and that honesty allows us to be able to be a better crew, be able to say, today's not the day for me to pull the oar. And that's the way it works out. But I think we hide a lot, which in dentistry, the biggest outcome of people hiding things is the embezzlement that happens in dentistry. I mean, it's the amount of money that I've found over the years is staggering. But that's what tends to happen. People who weren't doing their jobs tend to hide that they're not doing those jobs. They tend to have an accounts receivable problem that every now and then somebody yells at them and then the accounts receivable gets better. Honesty really solves a lot of that. And hiring people now has become it's silly, but it's become a matter of, do we hire somebody with a tattoo or not? Well, those are ridiculous things. It really should be about the personality of the person. It doesn't matter what kind of experience they have. It matters really how their personalities interact with everybody else. And, that to me is the bigger deal.
I love what you're saying there. I just a couple of days ago, I hired someone with pink hair. And, years ago, I would have said, no way. But you know what? I walked and my office manager interviewed her first. She loved her. We actually usually do group interviews, but we only had one applicant. And you know what? Normally I would have not even interviewed one person, thinking, no one is going to get lucky, right? And I don't know. She just started a couple of days ago. But my office manager walked in and said, she has pink hair, but I love her. And personality is really that we can always train for skill, right? And what amazes me is how often we end up hiring people with years of experience, and then we find out they don't have the right skills at all. They've been somewhere for years, not doing a good job. And it's surprising to me that they lasted that long. Any advice for dentists to kind of, how do we keep teams accountable? How do we know what's going on? I think most doctors don't have any idea what's happening at the front office. They may know what's going on with supplies or, anything that happens chair side, but they don't have a very good grasp on the front office, do they?
Yeah, and I think those who think they know really are not looking at the numbers they need to look at. I think one of the things that I love doing is, let's just find one number that's important. Is it profitability? Is it, and to me, that's really what it comes down to. For my dental business and for every other business that I'm in, it's really about profitability. So if we can figure out a way to show profitability for a practice, and the doctor only has to track that one number, how profitable are we today? So, okay, here's my payroll, and I know what my payroll is going to be, and this is what we made today. How did we do today? If I can just look at one number, then I can back into the rest of it. But I think the minutia, and yes, I want everybody to look at the reports on a daily basis just for the sake of it. But if there's one number I look at the end of the day that just say, how profitable am I today? I mean, that's what Walmart looks at on a daily basis, So if I look at how profitable I am today, then if that's one number I can track, and then on a monthly basis I get a report from my departments, that's okay. And I'm okay with that. But the doctors have got to pick one thing that they can work on because they're dentists and they've got to do the stuff that they do every day. I believe me, that's the one job in the practice that I don't want. I've done chairside, I've done everything else, but I don't want to be a dentist. It's too much work. If I can pick one number for them to track, we'll let them track it, and then we'll give them reports on the other things. And I think we've got some great reporting tools out there. And those are great, but I just don't want my doctors to be bogged down in the minutia. Pick one number that we can track that's a good pulse to be able to track. If that's good, stick with that one and you're good. Profitability, find a way to do it.
Excellent. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned sharing numbers with your team. Is that a good idea? Should they know the numbers?
I think they should. I mean, here's the thing. Okay. Almost any office manager can pick up a P&L from the internet that shows numbers for the practice. And so, like for me, I can walk into any practice in the US, I can get 3 numbers from them. And usually I can ask those questions without any issues. I'll get those 3 numbers. I can tell you what the doctor takes home. I can tell you how much they're sending to Shine or Patterson. I can tell you how much their lab bill is going to be, because those things are norms across the spectrum. It's 7% to your lab. It's 6.5% to Patterson and Shine. It's, so those numbers are, going to be pretty steady across the board. Now, if you're terrible and your overhead's 90%, that's a different story. But typically we know 60%, 65%, 55% overhead. So if we can divide that number up, we already know what you make. And, there's this myth that the practice thinks that the doctor's making millions of dollars since the practice made $1 million. We know, I was an office manager. I kind of know. We have to get away from that. And we have to be a little bit more transparent, because what the assumption might be is that the dentists are making so much money, but they should be. They're business owners. And I think one of the things, and I've done it without even the permission of my clients sometimes, is I'll say, hey, look, this is what the doctor makes. And if he worked for me and he was selling the same amount of production, this is what he'd be paid. And he's underpaid for what he's doing. So I think that you should be transparent and you should be honest. And that also takes away some of the animosity that happens, because what's a fair wage? And in my world, a fair wage is what you get paid. Otherwise, you would leave. It almost should be like, when I was in sales, I made a commission. If I didn't sell anything, I ate what I killed. So if I didn't sell something, I didn't make any money. And I think everybody in the office should have that same kind of mentality. They should see where they fit into that pie and what piece of the pie that they represent. It should be transparent.
I love what you're saying there. They should see how they can be responsible for those numbers. And it could be, for the front office, it's scheduling. If there are open opportunities on the schedule, you got to figure out how to fill them. If, the back office, ordering supplies, are they overstocking? Are they buying supplies that are being wasted? Are they not properly stocking, so that sometimes you're in the middle of procedure and you don't have something you need, and that slows everyone down? Or even, you brought up this example earlier, not having the operatory set up so that the doctor can just work in the flow. If your assistant leaves every couple of minutes, you can't really produce, right? How do you have that conversation with your team? For example, if someone is listening today and they say, you know what, Andre makes a lot of sense, I think I should start doing that in my practice. How do you start?
One of the easiest ways is to come up with something. There's a booklet that I get every year. It's called How Do I Compare? It's from an accounting firm in Massachusetts. I love this little booklet, but it shows from their clients what each category of spending should be. And if you just take that and just get your P&L from last year, I mean, you've got to be able to be able to provide this information. Show what the nation does, and then show what the office does, and say, we could probably save a few percentages here or there. Now, I'm a big proponent of doctors. If you have a lab that you love and you're going, I don't want to use any other lab other than this, and you're paying 8% as opposed to 6%, guess what? That's not going to change. And who cares? So let's leave it alone. But there are other things that we can work on. And a lot of that has to do with it. I call it the colander effect. We pour all this money in. It's what drops out that's more important. If we can seal a couple of the holes and we can get a percentage here or a percentage there, that's what's going to make the difference. And having the office look at that and see that, for every dollar we don't collect today, that means we're only going to get 75 cents in 30 days. So that's 25 cents we lost. That's the way you kind of look at it. And it's filling those gaps. So if we collect it today, we collected $1. If we collect it in 30 days, we collect 75 cents. That's what you have to understand. If you can do that, then I think everybody else starts to realize it. Everybody gets on the same page. You don't have to ask a hygienist, hey, can you get on the phone and call some people because we had an opening? They're thinking about it because they're saying, wow, maybe we can all go to the EDA next year and wherever it's going to be, because we made some money. We were a profitable business, and it trickles down. That's one place I do believe in trickle-down economics. So I think showing the numbers, getting a true way of looking at the nation, and then looking at your practice as a comparative, and seeing how you match up, seeing where you can make up some differences here or there. That's how you get the numbers to your people so that they understand.
As you were speaking, I was thinking that when you accrue and you literally everyone on the crew is rowing in the same direction, but that's not going to happen if they don't see where they're going, right? Yeah. They need to see the direction. They need to understand why they're going there. They need to understand, like you said earlier, how they fit into that big picture, what their particular job is. And I hope that a lot of our listeners are going to take that advice and change something. My biggest pet peeve with podcasts and business books and all that good information, sometimes, we hear it and we are excited about it and we plan to do something about it, but we don't. We get back to the practice the next day and just, nothing happens. You're a motivational speaker. How do we get started on things?
Honestly, and I'm a victim of the same issue because I do the same thing. But I also have. One of the things that drives me is my OCD. So like clearing my desk. So I always make sure that I do stuff because I always want to clear my desk to get to the next step. You really just have to have a process. That's what crew is. Crew is a process. So here's what I tell offices. If you learn nothing else about what I do, understand trying to put the crew process in place is a way of getting this to be circular. So crew started with the idea of like my kids in school. Dad, I want to get a better grade. Okay, so you're getting B's. You want to get an A. Great. So let's do this. Your challenge, the C in crew, is to get an A. Now, let's reflect the R. What did you do last month to get you to an A? Great. That's what you did. Now, let's come up with a plan or an energy to get you to the E. Let's get you to that A. Then let's measure it. So how did we win? So the end of the semester, great, you got a B+. That's phenomenal. But you told me you wanted to get an A. So how do we get from a B plus to an A? That's our new challenge. If we do that, we have our staff meetings. So last month when we had our staff meeting, let's look back at what we talked about. We wanted to get to $1.6 million in production. Great. Well, this is what we did last month in order to do that. So we're reflecting. What's our plan to break up the gap? That's our energy. And then let's measure it again. Everything that you do, if you do it in that process, challenge, reflection, energy, win, you can build yourself this inner ear motivational speaker who's constantly saying to you, okay, I got to do this because this is what we're going to do. And then we also have to measure it on a regular basis and say, how do we do? How do we do? How do we do? Everybody's wearing a Fitbit now or an Apple Watch or something. So you've got a measurement in place to get you to that point. I love the idea. Some of the seminars I do, I'll tell people to, set their watches, typically an Apple Watch or something, set it so that it's going to go off at a certain time. And usually I'll do it, say, let's set it for 12:15 so that I can remember to get us all out of here at lunchtime. But that tells us to do something. Set your reminder in Outlook that every couple of days you have to do something. Set it every 3 days. Set it on the 25th of the month so that you can look at your end-of-month numbers and see how close you are. Whatever it is, set yourself a reminder so it does it, so that you have your own little Tony Robbins speaking to you every once a month. And just do it. That's the easiest way. Because that seminar high goes away really quick.
That's true. That's excellent advice. And yes, and one of the things that Dr. Howard Coran likes to talk about is bringing your team to the seminar with them, because a lot of times doctor will go and then come back and try to explain it to his employees or her employees, and they have no idea what he's talking about, and they're just thinking, okay, just give him a couple of days and he'll just forget the whole thing, right? And when we bring our team with us to a seminar, and everyone on the team now can set up their alarm. Now we've got a lot of internal motivators.
Well, let me give you an example of how that cost a doctor. Let's just call it $7,000. So the doctor went to an implant course. He came back all ready to do implants, and he handed his office manager the implant coding that he got from the course. So I went into the office recently and I taught them how to do some advanced charting. And when we did that, we looked at the charting and realized that the crowns in this patient that we're looking at had never been charged out. The custom abutments and the implants were charged out, but not the crowns. But the office manager thought that custom abutment meant crown.
Oh.
So she thought they were two alternate treatment plans. So, were we doing crowns or were we doing custom crowns, custom abutments? So she had never billed out the crowns on 17th. And that was just the one patient we looked at. So that misinformation where that ball was dropped from the doctors going to the course until the information got to this front office person, $7,000 minimum.
Wow. And it probably would have cost less.
There for that course.
Yeah. And it would have cost less money to bring the team member to the course. Wow. Mind-boggling. Well, you speak a lot. Any interesting events coming up for you that we should be looking out for?
I'd send people to my website because I don't know half the time where I'm going to be. Usually I wake up in the morning and my alarm goes off and it tells me where I have to catch a plane. I was speaking pretty much every Friday between now and 2020. Between the dental meetings that I do, the EagleSoft Field Guide meetings that I'm doing, in-office trainings, private trainings. So I'm speaking almost every week.
Wow.
That's my new life.
That's exciting. I'm just curious, what is your you have your hands in so many different things, from coaching to speaking. You are always so helpful on your Facebook group, EagleSoft Field Guide, which now has almost 5,000 members, and it's a very active group. I've seen you post in other places. How do you keep up? I mean, what is your secret?
It's called voice activation. It's me 24/7. I'm either in my car or walking through an airport. I get probably about 150 questions a day. and I answer them all. But a lot of that goes back to my OCD. It goes back to the original tagline for my company was personal service, outstanding results. And that means that I really do. I think I need to answer every one of those questions. I love doing it. I get questions in other forums and somebody will tag me and it's just all I can do to pull the car over and respond. That's just how I am. I think I've said this, it's terrible. I wind up speaking at a lot of funerals. So terrible. Maybe it's my age. But one of the things I say is a lot of the people who are my friends who've passed away, who were just these bright candles who burned so bright. And I think that's it. You live full and you need to die empty. That's kind of my way of living. I love what I do, and I'll be doing this until they cart me out of here. I'll probably drop dead on a stage, which would be a good way to
drop mic.
Yeah, but that'll be the worst part about it, because that'd have been the best marketing I could have ever done. Everybody will be talking about it. But yeah, I think that'll be the end of it. And I'll be on stage giving some advice, and I'll just drop dead. But you know what? That's the way I'd rather go.
You're hilarious. Well, unfortunately, we are all out of time. I want to thank you for sharing your story, your sense of humor, your great advice. How can we find you? If someone wants to reach out to you, where can we find you?
The best way to get in touch with me, go to the website, which is www.thecrewprocess.com. There's a chat bot there. There's a big button that says, if you want to chat with me, click a button. It'll actually send an SMS, a text message right to my phone. Again, OCD. If you call me, you're going to talk to me. If they have any questions, I'm retired. I don't charge people. There's no swipe on my card to charge people when they talk to me. So call me, talk to me, and I'd be glad to give you ideas, suggestions. And as you know from the Facebook group, I love talking Eagles off, but I love talking practice management. And we can even talk retail.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And we hope you'll come back again.
It's my pleasure.